Finding a business to buy is a lot like dating on Tinder. 80% of the profiles are fake, 15% of the profiles are out of your league, and then there's the other 5% that aren't quite, relationship material. But don't worry, I'm here to help you get over those beer goggles, to find the good ones, look the red flags to look out for, and how to find a business that wants you to buy it. I'm James Massotti. I'm the owner of Our Team Accounting, and I've been through my fair share of due diligence issues, financial headaches, and deals that quite literally have fallen apart at the finish line. So today, I'm going to give you the real deal insights on what it's like trying to find a business that's actually worth buying, and make sure that you can keep your sanity and your humor intact on this roller coaster ride that is going to be buying a business. Okay, so let's start off with where is it that we should even be looking for businesses in the first place? And if you're just getting started down this journey, then my recommendation is that you go to websites like BizBuySell and BizQuest. The next place that you're going to want to go to is direct to the business brokers themselves. And then the third thing that you can do as you're thinking about starting to buy a business is simply just talk to everybody in your network about being able to, that you're looking for a business to buy. If you're going to get your hair cut, let your hairdresser know, hey, I'm thinking about buying a business. Do you know anybody who might be selling a business? Because guess what? You never know who's sitting in that chair and what they're talking about. They might actually talk to their barber about, the fact that they're trying to sell their business. Now, if you're like me and you don't have any hair and your wife's the one who cuts it, then I don't know how that's going to help you, but maybe you have hair and you do go to a hairdresser and you can have that conversation with them. But the point is that there's a lot of folks out there, whether it's other business owners, whether it's other professionals, people know people and they have conversations and they talk, and you'll never know what kind of connections that's ultimately going to lead you to, whether it's buying a business or may lead you down a path that you never even knew. Now, the fourth option is one that is not going to be relevant for everybody, but for the right person, it's a really good idea. And that is hiring a buy-side broker. This is an area where, business acquisitions are going to vary dramatically different from real estate transactions. There's generally only going to be one broker involved, and that broker is going to be paid by the seller. Unlike in real estate transactions where you can have both a buy-side broker and a sell-side broker, and then that commission ends up getting split between the agents, that will not be the case. And so if you want to use a buy-side broker to help you find and source deals and then help you navigate due diligence and make introductions to your due diligence team that's going to help you get the deal across the finish line, you're going to pay them. And they're not cheap. There's usually a monthly reoccurring retainer in the thousands of dollars. And then they will also charge you oftentimes a deal completion fee. That's a percentage of the total value of the business that you are purchasing. All right. So now that we've talked about some places where you absolutely should be looking for businesses to buy, let's maybe cover a few places that I strongly discourage you from looking to buy businesses. All right. So number one on this list, do not look for a business inside your McDonald's Happy Meal. You're not going to find one that you like there. Number two, do not look inside the prize box at the dentist office. I've been there. My mother-in-law is a dental hygienist. I've got a 6-year-old. I've spent a bunch of time looking in that prize box. I haven't found any businesses to buy there yet. I would also not recommend that you go to the clearance aisle at Walmart. Generally not the most desirable place to find a high quality business. So if you're looking there, go somewhere else to look. And of course, the last one is going to be your Saturday morning yard sale. You're going around, you're yard sailing. Hey, Gary Vee loves that. It's a great side hustle. Buy that stuff. Go ahead and flip it on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. But you're probably not going to roll up to that yard sale and see a sign that says $500,000 STE power washing business for sale. So again, just recognize that, talk about it. Lots of places to go, but there's some places that you probably don't need to be looking for business. Now, that being said, there is such a thing as what's called proprietary deal flow, or basically looking for off-market opportunities. And so these off-market opportunities is basically you doing some form of direct outreach to business owners. Now, here's the thing though, with this proprietary outreach, just like if you were doing, cold calling, for any other sales position, you have to understand that your success rate at this is going to be extremely, extremely low. You need to be really comfortable getting a whole lot of no's, getting ignored, having people yell at you. This is like the business equivalent of, trying to convince somebody to date you back on the days of like MySpace, just because you were like sending them messages saying like, hey, I like your picture. Do you want to go out for coffee? Like the vast majority of the time, that wasn't going to work. If they're not already working with a business broker to like understand the process and to understand valuations and all of that sort of stuff, there's a very real possibility that their expectation or the transaction is going to be completely out of this world, right? They're going to have zero concept of what businesses actually sell for. You just need to understand, but it's not just the price. Like they're also not going to be educated on the entire process of selling their business. So if you're going this path, it's very important that like you've kind of got your ducks in a row, but that you're also being extremely honest and transparent with the seller that you are engaging so that they build that trust and that confidence that you're not trying to take advantage of them, that you're trying to give them a fair deal, and how that all ultimately comes together. If you're interested in learning more information about our do-it-yourself and done-with-you group coaching programs, or if you're interested in taking your services to the next level with our fully outsourced accounting solutions, getting help with implementing Profit First, or even fractional CFO services, go ahead and scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description below to find out more about these programs and how we can help support you. Okay, so now that we've talked about, getting set up on like BizQuest and BizBuySell or setting up your proprietary deal flow, you're actually gonna need to like create a way of like building your funnel. As you're, building out your list and what you look at, you want to make sure you can keep track of, hey, I've already looked at this business. So you need to build your own system for, looking at that, keeping track of your notes, what you talked about, so that if you do end up going back and looking at all of these things, you have a way of kind of referencing all of that stuff. If you're going to be doing your own proprietary searches, then you have to have a way of actually like building out a list of like who you're going to contact, right? So some ways to go and do that is to use Data Axle or Info USA. They're kind of the same entity. Zoom Info, Apollo.io, and then Lead 411. So those are some websites that like, again, they all have like their pros and cons. And like what information you can get. And you can at least take a list that's extremely large and extremely vast and starts to narrow it down to be something maybe a little bit more manageable for you to focus your time and energy on. And then as you're going through this process of looking at businesses, you really need to be prepared that when you submit your letter of intent, your LOI, you're going to be sending out a bunch of them before you get any accepted. They're probably going to like fall apart doing the early stages of due diligence, right? So a couple of things. One, you just need to mentally be prepared for that. That again, you're going to take a lot of at-bats and you're going to strike out a lot. You also want to make sure that when you're submitting these letters of intent, a lot of brokers will try to like, strong arm you and then twist your arm behind your back and stuff like that to get you to put deposits down. That's common in real estate transactions, in business buying, unless there's like some weird nuancy, elements to the transaction. It's just not as common to put down a deposit. So if you're using that as maybe a differentiation tactic, or you identify where there's a specific reason that the seller has kind of communicated their desire to want to have that be available, but understand that like in business buying transactions, unlike real estate, like there is no, I would say there's no norms. You can kind of do whatever you want, but it definitely is more the norm that you don't pay a deposit than it is that you do. So now that you're going through this whole process of like tracking all the leads and all the businesses that you're looking at and evaluating, and you're actually getting to that point where you're talking about like you're wanting to submit an LOI. So you've maybe submitted the LOI and you're having to now filter down like, okay, is this a good business or not, right? So the first thing we need to do, and hopefully you've done this exercise already ahead of time. And so like we have a video that I previously did on identify like kind of like this like soul searching activity of like what's the right kind of business for you to buy. But beyond just that, like there's like what I call these traditional criteria of like what's a good business to buy. When I say traditional, what I'm really referring to is And the Harvard Business Review Guide to Buying a Small Business by Rick and Royce are the two professors at Harvard who wrote this particular book. They identified a number of things that, when buying small business are the ideal criteria. And what those really kind of recap to is, you want businesses that have a low client concentration. You want businesses where the SDE or the adjusted EBITDA number is above 500,000, where there's some form of reoccurring revenue, that there's some sort of a moat to the business, and ideally that it's low on CapEx. That's kind of like, I want to call that perfect buy box. But here's the thing, that's everybody's perfect buy box. And so the odds of you finding a business that checks all of that stuff that isn't already under contract to be sold by somebody else are pretty slim, right? But that being said, I was just recently listening to a podcast with Enrique Gonzalez on the Acquiring Minds podcast hosted by Will Smith. That Will Smith, not that Will Smith. For the record, he is somebody who spent his entire life in the construction industry, specifically electrical construction. He was a master electrician. He went back and got his MBA. He had an engineering degree. And so, the business he ended up buying was a project-based, non-reoccurring revenue, small SDE business. But he was very comfortable with that. And in the podcast, what he talks about is he went into that business. Oh, and it was in a geography where he lived, and he knew all of the general contractors that this business was subcontracting to. So when you talk about what's the right business buyer fit and what's for his buy box, it was having concentration of revenue. He was okay with that. He knew all the people. It was looking at, the size of the business. In his first year of business, he tripled the size of the business because he knew what levers to pull in order to be able to do that, right? He already had the license that he needed to be able to do it. So where that was in his mind, he was I wouldn't buy a business that wasn't like this because it's what I know and I knew exactly what needed to happen in order to achieve this kind of success. And so you're going to go through that process when you start looking at all these businesses. You're going to have your initial criteria, but you might start to be willing to look at slightly smaller, or you may realize your criteria over time is going to change. So the last part that I'm going to touch on here in terms of, making sure that you're, kind of trying to find the right business is that you need to actually build out some sort of a financial model. You need to be able to actually model out, what they're making, what the add backs are going to be. You need to factor in, or seller financing, how much equity you're going to bring, what the impact of, getting, putting debt financing on the business is going to be. And that's going to give you a landscape and a picture of okay, what are some scenarios, good, bad, and there's a really good, bad, ugly, whatever that you can kind of model out to be able to get to. So let's quick compare real estate buying and business buying together. So start off with, how are they going to be similar? First, they're both going to require a lot of patience. They're both going to require a lot of research. And in both of these scenarios, you're going to need to know what your criteria is, right? Where are you going to buy? What kind of asset are you going to buy? All of that sort of stuff. So there are many, many similarities in that regard. Now, what are the differences? In real estate, you are buying walls, right? You're buying land, you're buying walls, and then you are also then dealing with people, right? There's the tenants and all of that sort of stuff, unless you're flipping or wholesaling or whatever, again, or you might have industrial, commercial, there's all kinds of different stuff. But you're buying the asset, right? And the business, right? You're buying a lot more complexity and moving parts, the cash flow, the employees, the relationship, the technology, all of these things really need to hum along. And so that's really where it feeds into, the differences, because when you buy a real estate transaction, the walls aren't going to quit on you on day one. There is higher complexity with buying businesses. But because of that risk and because of that complexity, you're going to be buying a business at a much lower multiple than what you're going to be buying real estate for. So again, really, really, really great synergies, but again, very different. And it's important to understand what those differences are. You're going to start getting to the point where all right, I got it. How much do I actually offer for this business? So I want you to go ahead and click on the next video on your screen, where we're going to go deep into how to figure out what you should pay for a business. And I will see you over there.